Thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome you back to another edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert. And it's good to be back on the air talking with you and sharing a lot of information and stories. We want to thank all of you for participating and watching our show, whether it's live or whether it's on the recordings. We appreciate it because it's thanks to your participation that we have made the list of the top 25 podcasts in Fairfax County to watch up here in Northern Virginia. And most recently as well, we were also number 5 in veteran search, number 9 in veteran support, and number 12, believe it or not, for Warrenton, Virginia. When searching Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we had that reported to us as well. So we want to thank the audience as always for supporting our show. And speaking of supporting our show, before we get to tonight's guest, I want to take a moment just to briefly mention our sponsors, of course, Nationwide IT Services. As I mentioned, NIS is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business owned by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park and his crew. C.K. and them are located right there in Fairfax, Virginia. And folks, whether you need help with your business, whether it's IT security, training, professional development, 360-degree assessments and studies, his folks are aligned to do and help you or whatever you need. So make sure you give them a call, talk to them, and see what they can do for you. We also want to thank Hill and Ponton, PA, Veteran Disabilities, located in Florida. HillandPonton.com, you'll see them there. They've been in business for over 3 decades. And of course, their concentration and mission is to help veterans and their families navigate the myriad of requirements dealing with the VA and with VA disability and the entitlements that veterans, the benefits that veterans have earned and they should have. So if you're interested and you need help, you can also go to their website because they do post free webinars providing a lot of information to prospective clients or people just looking for information. So look them up, hillandponton.com. See if they can help you. All right, let's get into the show this evening. And tonight we are welcoming 2 guests, Molly Brooks, the director of Heroes Bridge in Warrenton, Virginia, and of course, Vietnam veteran and volunteer Mick Martin. And I want to thank you both for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys. And Molly, I know we've had some guests from Heroes Bridge before on the show, a number of veterans we had, and it's good that we could finally get you on as the director and another one of the fine veterans out there. And I know Mick is now a volunteer as well. So I just want to kind of let the audience know. First, Mick enlisted in the Army in 1970 after starting college, and Mick, you weren't the only one. I did that in my younger years too. So I ended up finishing school later as you did. Mick served as a combat engineer, and he was stationed along the DMZ, where he spent time dismantling bases and burning maps and preventing the enemy access to intelligence. So sounded like a pretty important job that he had there. Later, as he finished his term in the Army, he used a GI Bill to earn a bachelor's degree in Bible and theology, and then later got a master's degree in education. So Mick, now I thought it was kind of interesting, and we'll talk about this just a little bit. Mick, you started out as a vet in need first, and now that you're there and established, now you're volunteering. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And Molly Brooks is the director of Heroes Bridge. She's a registered nurse with 30 years of experience in specialty certifications in gerontology and hospice. And Molly, I guess that's a polite way of saying you definitely know how to take care of old people. So we're just going to put that out there now, but that's a good thing.
I'll go along.
So yeah, the interesting thing is that, you started off seeing this firsthand with the effects of Agent Orange on your own father, and you saw how it was affecting the aging veterans. And, I can only imagine because I've read and seen, some of the effects of that. So I think it's interesting that brought you to get started and start Heroes Bridge. And I know your guiding principle there is no red tape as you try to put things in place and make it as smooth and as easy as possible, which isn't always easy nowadays. So we definitely want to thank you. You guys are located there in Warrenton in Fauquier County, and we thank you both for joining us on the show.
Yeah, no, thank you for having. Sounds like you summed us up pretty well.
No, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try to at least get to know my guests a little bit and then talk a little bit more about this. So, Mick, I'm just going to ask you, starting out, Amy told me that you actually started out as a vet who was in need of some assistance and ended up with Heroes Bridge. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that and how you came to be a volunteer?
Yeah, I would be honored to do that. 2018, I ended up with in the VA hospital in Richmond for 37 days. My lungs filled up with fluid. They're scarred from Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Filled up with fluid, only to find out that my aortic heart valve had stenosis shut. So I was getting no blood into my system. I coded twice. Make a long story short, they got my lungs fixed up, gave me a pacemaker, gave me a new heart valve, gave me a defibrillator. You know, I've got more mechanical stuff in me than I do natural things, I think. So I'd been, it had been 3 or 4 months. We hadn't been able to pay our mortgage. We came back from the hospital. My wife stayed down there with me, and we started reaching out to people. And like the Sinise Association, Gary Sinise, and different organizations. Yeah. And we heard about Heroes Bridge. So we reached out to them, and then the DAV. And then lo and behold, Janelle, who is on staff here at Heroes Bridge, came to my house with Will King, who was with the DAV. And they sat down and helped me to fill out the paperwork. And at that point, I was walking with a walker. I was on oxygen. I was in pretty rough shape. And but anyway, good Lord blessed me to get my act back together and fixed me up. And so I started working with Heroes Bridge. And that started in 2018.
Wow.
Off and on. And I also went to work with the DAV. I was for 3 years, I was chaplain for the DAV in Fredericksburg, Virginia, for that chapter there. But then driving at night doesn't work too well with me anymore. So I'm more with Heroes Bridge now. But it was a blessing, and it looks like now that I volunteered, even though I started out as a veteran being served. Looks like I'm turn that around again here in a month or so, because I'm getting a knee replacement. And maybe I'll need a ride this time instead of taking somebody else.
No, I mean, that's an admirable story. And I say that in all sincerity because, you started out needing the help. And I've kind of been a little bit of where you're at with multiple surgeries and things from service-connected injuries. And I know it's tough. So I know that you went through a hard time, but to be able to turn that around and now give back your time at Heroes Bridge, I think is definitely commendable. So Molly, I want to ask you, I mean, it sounds like you got into this not only because of your background, but because of, I'm assuming, a little bit of what you saw with your own father.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I became a nurse very young because you pointed out the 30 years. I felt like I needed to say that.
Yeah, because you don't look that old.
I also realized that you enlisted before I was born. That made me feel younger too.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Before I was a nurse, I was the daughter of a career Marine. He went to Vietnam twice. And yeah, the 70s were rough on most Vietnam veteran families. They were not receiving the services that hopefully our younger veterans are now today.
Yeah.
Not only did they not get much help, they also had a lot of hostility they had to deal with. We were rather insulated because we were on Marine Corps bases, but that wasn't the case for a lot of our Vietnam veterans. And I think that the families, whether it was wives, children, brothers and sisters, had to kind of take care of these Vietnam veterans. So I did have a front row seat, as did my brothers and sisters and my mom, to just how difficult it was. And then as, you know, we move into the 80s and 90s, and then the PTSD that was not recognized when they first came home, started seeing more and more of that. And with that comes coping mechanisms that aren't healthy, drinking and different things. So it caused a lot of fractured families. Ours was not, thank goodness, but just had a front row seat. And then the Agent Orange, as they got older, the cancers, the heart problems, the diabetes. My dad found out he had diabetes in his 40s and just thought he was unlucky, right? Like didn't know then that it was orange. So I did have a front row seat to all of that. And then I became a nurse. And I think because of that experience, the veterans that I was caring for, I didn't gloss over it. Like when I was caring for them, I knew that many of them were sick because of their service. Many of them were up alone and later in life because they had lost their families or never had families because of what they went through. And saw it throughout my career. And I think as you get older, you start wanting to do more in the community. When you're young, you're busy, you have a family and stuff. And as I got older, it just didn't sit well with me anymore. You know, like it's like I would call the VA for help when I had it taking care of a veteran. And it was so hard to get any help. A lot that was, you know, and while the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were still going on. So I would call some of the big veterans organizations, and they were so overwhelmed with taking care of the veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. So didn't always get consistent help there either. And I just kept saying like to myself, like someone needs to start something that's just for older veterans because is so different. And one time after leaving a hospice patient that was in terrible circumstances, I sat in my car, tears in my eyes, and I kind of like felt God's voice like, Molly, it's you. I've been trying to tell you, you should start something. And
pay attention, Molly.
Right.
Pay attention.
Yeah. And thought it were small. Like my family and friends cobbled together $750 so we could file the paperwork. And I thought it was really small, just in our county, take a veteran some groceries now and then. But it has grown exponentially each year. And I probably should have known it would, because half of America's veterans are over 65.
Yeah.
And I don't know that America really like always remembers that. When we think of veterans, we think of our younger ones that have gone to the more conflicts, as we should. But it's just always my job to make sure America doesn't forget there's a whole nother half of our veteran population that are getting older, and they're going to need a lot of help.
Well, you know, I noticed that on the website that for the audience out there, you guys serve primarily the elderly veterans 65 and older, which, like you said, is a target that's needed. And I found it interesting. You have a number of programs out at Heroes Bridge. And for the audience there, if you go to the website, heroesbridge.org, you can read about all these programs. But there's one on there in particular, I think that Mick would definitely be one of those people who could help with, because I've actually done this for a couple of friends as a veteran. But the Honor Guard services, where you have, Mick, I'm assuming that some of the veterans go out there and help families and veterans recover their records of their medals, maybe set up display boxes, shadow boxes, so that they have some type of memories, maybe even to pass on to families, record life stories. Not to say that you sit there with a pen and paper, but probably coordinate recording life stories for veterans, portrait sessions. So Mick, is that something that you've seen there and been able to spend some time doing? Or
yeah, I've done some with that. Most of my work here is with the Battle Buddies, and also with a home front. I owned a construction company for years as a general contractor.
So one
of the things that I've been blessed to be able to do is, help build decks and build ramps and clean up yards and that kind of stuff. Now, getting my knee replaced probably going to slow me down a little bit on that. But also I do a lot with battle buddies, where you'll partner up with another veteran. May need a ride to a dialysis appointment, may need a ride to the hospital, may just need somebody to have lunch with them, may just need somebody to sit down and have a beer with them, and that's, we're on this thing called life together, and we can just kind of help each other out.
Well, I think it's good because, I know myself too, as a veteran, sometimes I think we have a unique perspective, of course, in talking and dealing with other veterans. That's most civilians just don't have. And that Battle Buddy program you mentioned, I know is really that connection, keeping that connection going. And you mentioned the home repairs, and for the audience out there, if you go, you're going to find out that's part of their Homefront program, where they help veterans and their families who are in need of home repairs and things of that nature. They have volunteers who step up to help them do that. Now, Molly, I want to ask you, though, one about I think is particularly interesting, and it's one I definitely enjoyed looking at and reading a little bit about, and that's the program you have there, the Paw Patrol, using the dogs to visit. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I noticed that our veterans, all of our veterans actually, it's just about 2/3 of who we get calls about are Vietnam veterans. We do serve Korean and World War II veterans as well, but the majority are Vietnam veterans. And I just found that they kind of like gravitate towards a couple of things for peace. And I think the earth. So a lot of Vietnam veterans, they kind of get these hobby farms, and they find a lot of peace and healing and farming and different things. Children, I think they love to see the children. And then the other thing are animals. And in my opinion, I think that those are all things that are kind of untouched by war, right? Like, so I just always felt and saw a lot of our veterans kind of getting some peace and healing from those things. And we decided, so much so that one of our programs needed to be an animal program. And again, adhering to the no red tape core value, we wanted to make a super low barrier for people to that had well-behaved pets could just go to a veteran's home and kind of take the dog and spend half an hour. So our Paw Patrol volunteers do not have to be pet therapy certified. That's quite a process. They do pass a little test of being well behaved and everything.
Yeah.
But we just have seen a lot of healing. Another thing is some of our veterans had a pet that they lost or had to give up, and it's really joy when we can match the dog breed, when a used to have a certain breed and we have a volunteer that can bring that brings a lot of tears of joy. And then the other part of the Paw Patrol is some of our veterans are having problems taking care of the pets that they currently have. And we can prevent them having to rehome them. We can. So sometimes we help with vet visits or pet food or different things like that, so that they don't have to give up that pet if it's possible. But sometimes we have had to help a couple of times where we kind of hold their hand while they do have to rehome them. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects to that. One of our favorites, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that one, I think, because I love dogs to begin with. And I think that's such an important thing, because you see hospitals using them in the hospital for even children recovering from surgeries and injuries and things like that. And you guys have such a vast variety of programs there. And we're going to take just a quick break here. And when we come back, I want to continue talking, because I want to talk to you a little bit about your village you're working on.
Yeah.
So for the audience out there, hold on, and we'll be right back to continue our conversation.
Do you want to get a charger?
All right. And we are back, and we're going to continue our discussion now with Molly Brooks, the director of Heroes Bridge in Warrenton. And there's Molly. She's stepping right back in. And of course, Vietnam veteran and volunteer at the center, Mick Martin. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about some of the various programs that you both work on there at Heroes Bridge. And before we go any further, though, I do want to just mention to the audience, because we're going to talk a little bit about your village here in just a minute, but I want to remind the audience as we talk about this, and I'll probably do it again later, but we have the website up there, heroesbridge.org. We encourage you to go there, folks, because there are a lot of opportunities there for you to donate, whether it's your time or your funds. And we're going to talk about what they're trying to do with their new village here in just a minute. And Heroes Bridge is definitely in need of assistance and donations. They have a lot of different avenues up there to donate. Molly and Mick, as you can see, I've got my Heroes Bridge shirt on today for the show. And I actually purchased that just a little while back. And for those of you, let me just ask you real quick, Molly, while I'm talking about this. Do you guys still have your brick program?
We do. We do.
Okay.
And yeah. So people can help they can put their name on the village and show their support that way.
Yeah, I was just going to tell them, I did a brick about, I can't remember how, it was just a little while back. I did a brick and I just bought my t-shirt. So there are ample opportunities out there for our audience for you guys to go to the website. Even if you can't go out there, if you live far away, in another state, you can go to the website, heroesbridge.org, and you can go ahead and look and see how you could help and make a donation, whether it's just purchasing some of the t-shirts or hats or a brick for the garden, whatever it is. I just wanted to mention that, and I'll probably do it again before we get to the end, because there's ample opportunity for that. So, Molly, I know that you guys at one point, I thought you guys might have been facing a little bit of an uphill battle getting approval to get that village put in, because I know you had a little bit of resistance over there for a little while, but I think they finally voted 5-2 to let you guys continue with the village. So if you would take a few minutes and share with us what the village is, and then I want to get Mick to share with us what he plans to do once we get it going.
Sure. Yeah. So when I started Heroes Bridge, I really wanted to make sure that the programs matched what I was seeing in our veterans as I was caring for them as a nurse over the years. And housing related issues are the number 2 issue that we see with our veterans. Substandard housing, unaffordable housing. Their landlord decided to sell the rental and now they have to move, and the rental market is so inflated outside of Washington, D.C. We see veterans living on $1,600 a month in Social Security, and the average rent here is, I think, $1,800 a month. So how does that even work? So housing related issues, we just see them over and over and over. And for a few years, we worked with that, and we still do, trying to remediate those issues and help our veterans through those things. But at some point, myself and the rest of the Heroes Bridge board decided, can we stop putting a Band-Aid on these situations? There just isn't enough affordable, clean and safe housing in our area. I think it's a problem across the country, actually, but so could we contribute to the housing stock and make this special community just for older veterans? So we declared our intentions a few years back to do just that, and partnered. There was a church in the middle of our town that had a vacant lot that no one cared about until we decided to do something special there. And we did fight a year-long rezoning battle. And it was a Christmas miracle in December when they approved it. The whole town hall erupted in joy. We went into that night. We didn't know if we had the votes. We actually thought we didn't have the votes. So it was a Christmas miracle. And the way the community came out throughout the whole year-long process, but that night was amazing. I think we might have some of that on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to see it. But I think that one of the reasons that I wanted Mick on this podcast with me is he kind of was there the whole way through. You spoke more than once, not at just the final hearing, because the rezoning were just like, I think it was like 6 to 8 different hearings that we had to kind of battle through. And Mick was there, and not to put words in your mouth, but I think because you see the veterans, right? Like you see how they're living, and it was very for you to want to speak out passionately that no older veteran in America should be living in the conditions that we see.
That's correct.
And in such a wealthy area too. I think our county always makes the top 20 wealthiest counties in America. So not in Virginia. We're in a very wealthy on the Virginia side of DC, and it's just shameful, really. So Mick was there, and as were so many others, and just let you speak for yourself why that was so important to you.
Well, let me just ask Mick something along those lines, Mick, because this will kind of lead in, I'm sure, to what you want to talk about. Is so as a veteran yourself and seeing what all they went through. So what was your thought? How did you feel that night when you went in there and heard the vote after they approved it? How did that hit you, being a veteran and seeing everything you've seen?
It was a great time, and let's just put it this way: there were some of us that celebrated at Molly's Irish Pub afterwards. So,
not
your pub, Molly. I was going to ask, is that Molly's Pub or? No, so I'm sure that was a great feeling for you, being a veteran and being a volunteer there. And finally getting that vote to go the way you guys were hoping it would go, so that you could continue on the work. So Mick, I just want to continue on something here with you. You were talking about earlier how, you're not one of those people that drive at night, especially, or drive a lot. I noticed that some of the statistics you guys put up there, trying to, get the community to understand. You join what, about 83% of the veterans that don't drive any longer, the older veterans, along with 57% who are socially isolated, and an additional 67% who are low income and in need of this village. So I'm sure, Mick, that was a really good feeling for you to see that vote go the way it did.
Yes, and being a high energy person, I'm ready to get going here. Let's break ground. Let's build buildings.
Well, I think, and Molly, you can allude to this a little bit more, but you guys have, based on your website, you guys have raised enough for all the pre-development costs, but you still have about 4 other stages that you're still in need of funding for. So why don't you, I know it's a 4-acre lot, and you're planning 44 cottages to service the veterans, and give them a clean, safe place to live. And you've already got a wait list of veterans who are waiting to hopefully move in and be able to take advantage of this. So what else are you facing now, Molly, to continue this going? What are your other phases you're working?
Yeah, thank you for asking. We have the funding, and we're ready to move into what's called site plan and permitting, where we battle with the town again. Hopefully not as bad as we the rezoning. But it can be a 4 to 8 month process where you show them the very detailed stormwater and everything plans. And again, that can take 4 to 8 months. And we have the funding and all the team in place to do that. But we really are also pivoting to raising the rest of the money. The budgets vary with inflation and tariffs and everything that's going on in the world. But we probably need another 10 to 12 million for the hard construction. And what would hate is to get through site plan and permitting and then have to pause because we don't have the funding in
Right.
place. So we have a lot more money to raise. And when you were talking about the bricks and everything earlier, times are hard. So we tried to make a big variety of ways that people can donate to get this village built. So there's 3 different size bricks. So whether you afford $1 for a small brick to put your name on this village forever, or there are corporations, and like I said, we live in a very wealthy area. We're offering all the way up, like for 2.5 million, the community center would be named after a business or a family.
Wow.
So, and then there's all kinds of levels in between, like the walkways. You can sponsor the kind of landscaped walkways that will be, or rooms within the community center. So we tried to really just realize that everybody's in a different place in life, and we just tried to make opportunities where everyone can kind of help get this built. And we're hoping people will check out those options.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that because, yeah, you're right. The various levels that people can look at and donate, and for the audience out there, again, heroesbridge.org. If you go and look at the site, Molly and her folks out there, and Mick, the volunteers, they're doing such good work out there, and I have to tell you, being a disabled veteran myself, thank goodness, at least physiologically, my health is pretty good. Structurally, I'm a mess, Mick. Two knees replaced, a shoulder replaced, staples in my foot, but the rest of me, knock on wood, I'm doing okay so far. But I consider myself very fortunate to be an older veteran and, have a nice home to live in. I still have a spouse and things. And yet so many of our veterans, older veterans, just don't have that. Things that we take for granted all the time. And, so I definitely can identify with what you guys are trying to do out there because there are still so many people in need of help. So, Molly, how do you think this is going to go now? You're getting ready to start the next phase. Has your fundraising has there been any consistency to it, or are you guys looking at some other special programs to try and put in place for fundraising? What's your plan?
Yeah, we're just pursuing all avenues. There are some government funding avenues that how affordable housing usually gets built, and we are looking at those programs. In my opinion, some of those programs are exactly why we're in the situation we're in.
Yeah.
So complex, and they say you can rent to this older person but not that older person, and it kind of violates our red tape core value. So we would raise it privately, but I think if I have to look at all options. Of course, we're looking at corporate partners, and some of the other large, they call them the Big Six veteran organizations. Some of them actually give very generously to other smaller veteran nonprofits. So we are talking to a few of them about a big donation, maybe that 2.5 million community center donation.
Yeah.
And I think to get this done, it's going to have to be all of that. We're going to have some other veteran organizations that are bigger and been around longer than us help us out. The business community we're offering the cottages for sponsorship for $50,000 a piece. So mid-sized business could do that and help us get this. And I think just what has gotten us this far, just individuals, whether they write out a check for $10 or $10,000, dollar matters. And I think it's going to take a mix of all of those things to get this done. And we're working every day. If anyone's interested, they can email us or reach out through the website, and we'll sit down privately and talk about how you want to contribute.
Yeah, no, that's good. And, I don't want the audience to think this is just a fundraising show, because for those of you that do watch my show, we don't do our show that way. But this is such an important project that you guys have. And, I feel for it, as I said, because I feel so blessed to be in the position I'm in. And I'm sure Mick probably feels pretty good at this point too. So Mick, I just want to ask you, before we get close to the closing of the show, Molly, I know you got into this, especially after what you saw happen to your father. But Mick, is there can you share a particular story out there in your work with Heroes Bridge that comes to mind that really stood out to you or touched you?
I think for me, not just Heroes Bridge, but I've always been involved in nonprofit organizations. I pastored a church for 15 years and always did a lot with nonprofit and volunteer organizations. And Heroes Bridge has a very special place in my heart, not only because they helped me, but because of the opportunity just to help other veterans. I have too many friends, or had friends, that they retired, they sat in their recliner, they watched television, they drank beer, and a year later they were gone.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that they had no purpose. They didn't know what they wanted to be when they grew up.
Yeah.
And Heroes Bridge has helped give me a purpose to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, that's great. When Cece, our studio head, contacted me almost 5 years ago, and asked me if I'd be interested in hosting a veterans podcast like this for the network. I looked at it, it's kind of the same thing, Mick, as a way to, you want to give something back, you want to contribute. And, this is something that I've enjoyed doing, just like you've enjoyed your work there, the volunteer work that you guys are doing. And I have to tell you, you guys are doing great work there. But before we close the show, Molly, I'm going to ask you for one final input here. If there was one message you'd like to share with the audience, what do you think that would be?
I think the most important thing I can share is that I did start this organization, and thank you for complimenting our work. It's been my greatest joy, but I'm just one person, and I don't know how far and wide your viewership goes, but anyone can do what I did and what our volunteers do on a like a micro level. You do not have to look far to find an older veteran. Some people at your dinner table are older veterans, or your neighbor, or someone at your church. I really just encourage everyone to look around them. And if there is an older veteran that hasn't picked up their mail in a week, you might want to check on them. And maybe you do get their mail and bring it to them. I just think America could do so much for older veterans if everyone just kind of looked around and watched out for our older veterans kind of on a micro level. And then there wouldn't need to be a Heroes Bridge. And I think America wants to do that. So I would just encourage everyone to kind of see what they could do in their own communities and neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's actually a very good thought. I have to tell you very quickly, and my wife would tell you, whenever I see especially an older veteran, and I'm out somewhere, whether I'm out with my cane hobbling around, or if I have to take my electric chair because I'm going out for longer distance, if I see another veteran, especially an older veteran, there's something compelled inside of me to go talk to them.
Yeah.
I've done that since I've retired. Mick, I imagine, you're probably the same way. But I want to thank you both for taking the time to come on the show and share the information and share your experiences of what you're doing over there. I think it's so important. And of course, that's the reason why I reached out to Amy again and said, hey, let's get on here and give folks the update of what's going on and what's going on with your new project. And because I think it's so important. And I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come on the show and share the updates with us.
Paul, we want to thank you for the opportunity for letting us do this and for being a part of our life. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you. I hope we
I'm
can.
very happy to do this. And Molly, I'm going to talk to Amy because my next plan is to plan a trip to come out there and see you guys.
Oh my gosh, we would love
That
that.
would be wonderful.
We could do it at the church site where the village is going to go. That would be fun. And I feel like we're kind of soulmates in this work. And I think there's like 1,000 things we could talk about. So yeah, we would love to.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again for joining us this evening. And for the audience out there, again, don't forget it's heroesbridge.org. Go take a look. See if you can help in any way, whether it's a small donation or anything else you can do to reach out. So I encourage you to do so. And for those of you out there in the audience, the rest of you, our veterans info for tonight, VFW joins with Main Street to provide financial education to veterans. So there it is, folks, VFW, there's the website. I know it's kind of long, but you can freeze the picture, or you can go to my webpage on the Studio Network and you'll find the information in our resource file. Look it up because the VFW has actually got classes and training programs for veterans to help them gain important financial planning information and to help you with your as you get older, like I've done, plan for permanent retirement, let's say. So check it out, folks. There it is. We hope you will make use of it. And for all of our veterans and families out there, again, we want to say thank you for your service. Thank you for supporting the other veterans and for serving our country. And for the audience out there, we thank you again for joining us tonight. And we hope to see you on our next show.